What do you think the bigger picture is here for Deadpool in the MCU? And how do you think that Marvel's going to play it? I want to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Okay, guys, we have one last bit of news to cover. Unless you've been hiding under a rock, the movie Black Widow came out last weekend in theaters and on, streaming on Disney Plus for the premiere access thing, whatever. I went out to go see it in theaters, and I loved it. I will give it 1 thumb up. I don't think it's necessarily deserving of 2 thumbs up, so I'm sticking with 1 thumb up for now. But we're not necessarily going to talk about a review or like what we loved and what we hated, or maybe not liked quite so much about the film, but more, how did it do? How did it do? And like, where is Disney and Marvel situated right now in terms of pandemic, in terms of moving forward, in terms of theaters, in terms of streaming? There's a lot of moving components here, and I kind of want to discuss this a little bit. We know this particular article is from MovieWeb, but I want to just kind of go in for a second. Let's talk about the numbers. Black Widow is now officially the highest grossing movie since the pandemic. Final numbers obviously are not in yet because it just opened, so it still has a long run. I think was it? I'm thinking Inception. What was the other Christopher Nolan film? Help me out. That just came out.
I don't know.
A few months ago, Christopher Nolan film, Tenet, about backwards time. Got it. Tenet. So Tenet came out. I think it grossed in its longevity around $350 million. I think that's what it topped out at. That should have been its opening weekend box office. It wasn't. That was the entire run, the entire span of the film, but it's also right in the middle of the pandemic. So how do we compare and contrast that? I know other movies since have I want to say Cruella. Did Cruella top it? It may have. I can't remember. But in its opening weekend, Black Widow kind of smashed all expectations here. So let's jump back into this article from MovieWeb. Black Widow now has the highest opening domestic weekend since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And if Disney Plus Premier Access numbers are taken into account, it's also the first movie to make over $100 million on its opening weekend. All in all, it's a sign that Marvel's absence from theaters for 2 years has certainly made the heart grow fonder. And while some have cited dual releases as the death of cinemas, it seems that cinemas can hold their own when the right move comes along. With Black Widow becoming the third highest grossing origin story from the MCU, sitting behind only Black Panther and Captain Marvel, it seems like Black Widow is definitely the right move at the right time. The article continues to tell a few other numbers. Where'd we go? Absence of movies, yada, 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 Loki, all this stuff. At some point, it mentions more. Here we go. The breakdown is even more impressive as The Taking split came out fairly even, with the domestic cinemas accounting for $80 million and $78 million coming from the international market, and another $60 million making up the rest via streaming and buy-ins. So here we are. We have Black Widow debuting in theaters domestically at $80 million. It debuts internationally at $78 million. And then the whole price number breakdown crunch, about $60 million from streaming. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. So well over $100 million domestically. So we're at 80, 80, 160, and 60 is 220. So yeah, all in all, worldwide, about $220 million for its opening weekend. That's considering the pandemic, that's absolutely incredible. So from where I'm sitting, you guys, I'm seeing that. Let me readjust this screen. From where I'm sitting, it looks like Disney And yeah, the Disney company doubled down on what theaters are able to do. They've trusted in the system. They know that people are getting vaccines and that people are willing to come back out to the movie theaters. They know that there's still part of the population that is apprehensive about going back to the theaters. Or I guess, they're just more comfortable staying at home. They want to see their movies. They want to see these big budget blockbuster movies come out. But they're also just, why do we have to go to the theater to see it? Why can't we just buy it for $30 and stay at home? And then we can watch it as many times as we want, right? I think Disney has, in a sense, I don't want to say cracked the code, because everybody was poo-pooing this idea of, oh no, if you put it out on streaming, you're not going to make as much money in the theaters. And while still this idea has yet to be fully tested, this is probably the big success story. Combine that with the idea that people are hungry for Marvel right now. We are hungry for the MCU. We haven't seen a lot of big budget blockbuster films come out in theaters lately. It's been a minute. Fast and the Furious, I think, was the highest grossing movie just before Black Widow came out. And Fast and the Furious has a dare I say, it has a more limited audience than the MCU films do. We haven't seen an MCU film in 2 years. Spider-Man Far From Home was the last MCU film we saw, and we only started getting Disney Plus shows like Loki, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like WandaVision earlier this year. We were supposed to get them last year, but they all got pushed. They all got delayed until this year. So less than 6 months ago, we started getting television shows on Disney Plus. But it's not the same experience. It's not the same as going to the movie theaters. Dominica, as we talk about this, as we break this down, whether we love Black Widow, whether we didn't like Black Widow, we know it was a good movie. It did well. Audiences are responding positively to it. Minimal criticism about it. But how do you think Disney and Marvel specifically are going to benefit from this? And what do you think the audiences are telling us with how they're willing to spend their dollars?
It's interesting. I feel like this is something I'm happy to talk about from more a personal standpoint.
Yes,
for myself. I did not want to pay for Premier Access for anything. I'm like, I will wait until like the 2 months or whatever is past so I can watch it for free on Disney Plus. Right?
Totally fair.
But Black Widow was the first movie I saw in theaters since just before everything shut down because of the pandemic. The last film that I'd seen for Black Widow in a theater was Onward, Pixar's Onward. And it was like 5 days. So Onward didn't even get a proper like movie screening.
No, it didn't. Yeah, it got like an opening weekend, which was it was okay. Like the movie was okay, and the opening weekend, it was okay. But yeah, you're right. They did not get their due credit.
So I was glad that I watched it before everything shut down. I don't know that I would have been comfortable seeing this in the theater earlier. I've been vaccinated for about 2 months now, so I felt a little bit more confident going into theaters, especially with how well California and in the Bay Area in general seems to be doing with the virus. However, I used to live in Australia and Malaysia, so I'm connected to people in those places. Sydney, Australia is currently locked down. They're not. 11,000 COVID cases a day. They're under lockdown stuff as well. They're not going to be able to see in theaters. So, I feel for people who are not in our situation. Yeah. And they are going to want to see, have access to this stuff as well. So, I think it's a good thing that they ended up deciding to have the streaming availability for for people who are not in our situation.
No, I mean that's a great point, because there are people who are in situations that just don't feel comfortable going back to the theaters, who don't feel like, in general, just kind of don't want to leave their homes, and I get that. I understand that, and I think this is a brilliant option to serve both parties. If you want to see it in theaters, yes, it's available. Go check it out. Support the theaters, because if we want these kinds of movies, we have to pay the price tag to support them. If people aren't going to, in mass, spend $1 billion to go see a movie, well, then we're not going to get $1 billion movies anymore, right? It's just economics. It's just how it works. Could movie studios plan better and have better ways of spending their money? 1,000%, yes, they could, and they should. They totally should. But be that as it may, okay, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to kick this over to the comment section. See what you guys have to say about this. What are your thoughts about Disney and Marvel kind of marketing and placing this movie in the ways that they did? What other movies do you think are going to benefit from this? What do you think the future of cinema going is going to be as a result of this? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Jump on down to the comment section below. Caleb says Black Widow probably made its budget back in a weekend. Marvel just knows how to get stuff done. Not really. Not really. And let me explain why. So, I mean, not yet. Let me put the caveat on that. Not yet. So the way these things work is you have the budget, and then you have the marketing budget, and then you have to pay the movie theaters, right? So your budget is, here, let me just look it up real quick. Black Widow budget. Okay, so the budget for Black Widow was $200 million. So that means in order to market the film, you have to double that number. So now you have to spend another $200 million to market your movie. So now you're in the whole $400 million. And then on top of that, you have to pay your movie theaters for showing the film. Sometimes it's a little bit less, sometimes it's a little bit more. Every movie gets negotiated between the studio and the cinema. So like it may cost, let's just say, Marvel Studios a little bit more to show their film in an AMC theater as opposed to a Cinemark theater, depending on the contract that they negotiate. And it may cost Marvel Disney Studios a little bit more to show it at an AMC theater in Times Square rather than an AMC theater in the middle of Nowheresville, Kentucky, right? It all depends. So everything is negotiated, but on average, on the whole, you just normally calculate about 1.5%, which means half of your marketing budget, half of your actual budget, right? So that's another $100 million that you're going to end up paying the movies just to play your movie, on average. So now a $200 million movie needs to make $500 million at the box office just to break even. That's a rough estimate. That's pretty much what everybody uses. That's the matrix. That's the cubic rhythm that they do. Cubic rhythm? I don't even know if that's a thing, but it is now. So yeah, did they make their budget back in one weekend? No, but they made half their budget back in one weekend. Just a little under. But yeah, they made close to half their budget back in one weekend, which that ain't bad. Dominica, thoughts on this whole thing of, Marvel and Disney making their a good amount of their budget back in one weekend?
I mean, that's pretty impressive considering how movies have fared in the pandemic, to be honest.
Yeah. I agree. Let's see. Redacted83 says, if I want to go to the cinema, I have to find a babysitter. Plus, it costs 25 quid. So I watched on Disney Plus Don't hurt me. It was great, and I didn't miss the cinema. Redacted 83 goes on to say, this doesn't mean I don't want to go to the cinema. I love it, but sometimes I'm impatient. I totally understand this. I totally understand your frustration and your position as well. Like, if you want a babysitter, yeah, sometimes it costs more money to get a babysitter than just buying it on Disney Plus. I get it. Or I guess technically renting it. You've unlocked a subscription feature, I think would be a more apt way to put it, as opposed to purchasing it. But yes, I get it. And I think that's another of the smart creative things that Disney is starting to do. When Mulan came out on Disney Premier Access, Disney Plus Premier Access, a lot of people poo-pooed it. And rightfully so, because it wasn't the right movie to do that with. It wasn't the right movie. Like, Mulan doesn't have the same kind of love that the MCU does. And if you watch my videos, go back to the time that that we were talking about Mulan coming out on Premier Access, because I was talking about when Black Widow comes out, if they do put it out on Premier Access, which at the time I didn't think that they would, because they also said they were very open and frank, saying that they were not going to put this out on Disney Plus Premier Access. But guess what? They lied. They did it anyway. But it works. It works for them because it works for the audience. They know what kind of property that they have. Dominica, any other thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, I really wanted to see the Mulan movie. I didn't want to pay for it on streaming.
Fair. But I think it's also fair to say that Mulan across the world probably doesn't have the same amount of love that like the MCU does.
Yes, no, I agree with that. It's a different audience as well, right? I mean, there's people who love both,
Yes.
but you're not. It's like a Venn diagram.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this video, click like. If you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what Tony Stark's Iron Man would want you to do.